Hi everybody, welcome back to the Our Life channel, and today we're going to be reviewing a movie titled Matwetwe. But before we go into that, I just want to say Happy New Year. I haven't seen you guys since last year. December festive season gets a bit hectic, and I was a bit lazy, but I'm back now and there's more stuff coming. So without wasting any further time, let's get into it. So Matwetwe is a movie directed by Solidi, starring Sbusiso Quinana and Debatso Mashishi as the main characters, and it's basically it's a coming of age movie about two guys who just matriculated. One is about to study botany, just been accepted into vets to go study botany, and that kind of plays into the storyline of the movie, because in the movie these two guys are they selling weed. The one character is sort of like the farmer of the weed, and the other one is more of the business, the entrepreneur side of it. It takes place on New Year's Eve of 2017, the entire movie, and it's about they have to run a couple of errands, sell some weed here and there, and then after that they have to go, classic festive season New Year's Eve style, they have to go to a party after that, and then a lot can happen in 24 hours, as you know. So the movie just basically takes place within those couple of hours, and that's basically what the premise of the movie is. So usually you guys have heard me say this a lot. That's another thing, I just want to quickly put out a disclaimer. Whenever I compare a movie I'm reviewing to certain movies that exist, I'm not taking away from the movie I'm talking about. I'm just trying to give you a visual mental picture in terms of what are we talking about here, so you can use information you already have to kind of piece together a picture in your head, so you kind of have some sort of anticipation. So I know most people complain and they're like, oh, then what's the point of me watching this movie? I've already seen it. No, it's not to say that, it's just to give you an idea of what to kind of expect, and right now I'm about to do that. And this movie is basically like, take a splash of Breaking Bad and a splash of Superbad, that series and that movie, you put it together, maybe like 5% in total of the entire movie is that, and then the rest of the 95% is just pure authentic South Africanness, Pretorianism. That's another thing, this movie takes place in Pretoria and Atteridgeville, and this is a very key and important piece of information, because this is what makes the movie shine the most. It's very self-contained, and it's about itself. It's not trying to impress anybody else who's outside of a specific sphere, and that doesn't necessarily take away from the movie, because even if you don't come from that certain background, you still understand it, you still get it. But if you come from that background, if you're black, if you're young, or you're millennial, or just older than millennial, if you've lived in South Africa and you've been involved in black culture, and if you're familiar with Pretoria, and if you're multilingual, it just takes this movie to another height. The experience in terms of the riff, sort of like everybody else can get the jokes because there's subtitles also, there's that, so no problem, you understand what's happening in the movie without a doubt. But what if you know the reference, if you know the lingo, the dialect that's being spoken specifically in the movie is a dialect called Sipitori, which is like, it's a combination of many languages. Zulu, Tsonga, Venda, Sotho, Setswana, Sepedi, Afrikaans, English. It's a combination of all of those all of those words, and it only exists within Pretoria. And it's a very nice a very nice and funky language or dialect rather, to listen to. And this is what makes the movie just have its own identity, and just, if you get those references, if you understand what is being said and how it's being said, it just heightens the entire experience. And while still on that point of it having certain references that, depending on where you're from, they'll actually mean a lot, and they'll actually just heighten the movie, the soundtrack is what I want to talk about. In terms of the music selection or the soundtrack, if you understand, if you know the music, because as I mentioned, this song starts off on an extremely high note. Spoiler, no spoiler, it starts off playing, if I'm not mistaken, that is Mujava's Mukwandiwa Pitoria, and it just, everybody went crazy when we were at the screening. the minute it starts like a trailer because you're not expecting it, but then it just goes on full force. It takes you on a high note as it begins, and the music selection is another thing that just makes it even more authentic. It's very obviously, I think the entire selection is local music, and it's local music that is very relevant to a certain specific, not time necessarily, but area and place and group of people. And that's what I meant. That's one of the things I meant when I said there's certain references that will just take this movie from being a good movie for a normal person to being an extremely like wonderful and exceptional movie for someone who gets the references, the music, what is being said and how it's being said. This is Kagiso's second movie in a span of like less than a year, if I'm not mistaken. Catching Feelings came out sometime mid last year, and this is his second movie. And I feel like this movie was made before Catching Feelings, but we'll get into that in another video. So that's another thing I want to say is like, I feel like Kagiso is now starting to become one of those directors who's now starting to make movies like, okay, now we should maybe try to pay attention to this guy, because 2 movies in a row and both of them very good movies in my opinion. And the direction, I feel like he's growing into being a very consistent director. Another thing I want to talk about is the acting. The first 2 minutes of the movie when it started, I was sort of cringing. And then that was basically about it. Next thing I know, the movie was done, and I hadn't felt like that since the first 2 minutes. That's how good and natural the acting was. And I think one of the things to attribute to that is the fact that when I checked, I found out that I think the entire cast is Praetorian. So it's I'm assuming it came very naturally for most of them. It's very close to home, it's close to who they actually are, and so that's why you kind of didn't feel like there's any sort of overacting or lack of acting for that matter. And that's one thing I really liked about the movie. It felt very authentic. And then there were another thing that I want to mention is there were stories that kept being, and that's another, the movie starts off as these guys just telling stories, and they were like, what story should we tell about things that have actually happened, funny enough, shocking things that have actually happened in Pretoria. And I learned a lot that I had no idea. I was like, wow, okay, I had no idea these things actually happened. So it's kind of like loosely based on things and people that existed, and stories that have actually happened in real life. Most of them very shocking and disturbing, but you know how comedy is. Comedy can play on that element of being very dark and turn it into a very not positive situation necessarily, but a very humorous one at that. So there was that, and that's what I really liked. As I mentioned, it's a very self-contained movie, and it focuses a lot on its stories. I've mentioned quite a lot of things, all of which I've actually liked. Now I'm going to get into the stuff that I kind of didn't like. To be quite honest with you, not many of them when it comes to this movie, which is funny because first time I saw the trailer and trailers to this movie, I was like, no thank you, I'm fine, I don't care, I'll go watch it because that's what I do, but oh my god, I do not want to sit through this again. And I take all of that back, all of it. Like there's not even one thing that the feeling I felt while watching the trailers that I'm like, nothing. I don't even understand how the trailer looks, because the trailers, even when you watch them now, you kind of, when I've seen the movie, I kind of like get like, okay, I get it now. But if you've never seen the movie, I can understand and I can forgive anybody who's like, this movie doesn't look like it's gonna be good. And it is the opposite of that. This movie is amazing. Basically, it's just the trailer that I didn't like. And apart from that, just one thing in terms of the cinematography, there were certain drone shots that were used in the movie. Quite a few of them pretty noticeable when it was switched to drone shots in terms of the overall resolution of the movie. It doesn't necessarily take away that much, but you could kind of feel like, okay, this is an inferior camera shooting this scene, but it's usually just mostly drone shots. And the movement of drone shots, you could kind of, sometimes it would just pan upwards and then it would move in a very robotic manner. Once again doesn't take away from the movie. I'm just being me here, being nitpicky and kind of snobbish. But apart from that, I love this movie. If you've seen the movie, if you have attended any of the screenings that have been taking place, please tell me how you felt about the movie. Comment down below or tag me on Twitter at @ManawLive. If you haven't seen the movie's coming out on the 25th of January, which is the Friday after next Friday. Go check it out. Please go check this movie out. I can't even emphasize how much if I could, I would take you guys there. I also do feel like most people who don't know about it, or people who just saw the trailer, most people won't go watch this movie and might not make enough money at the box office. But I feel like over time it's going to become like one of those movies that reach cult status, because if enough people catch on to it, even if after it's been in theaters, on DVD or whatever the case is, or Netflix and such, or Showmax, people will catch on to this movie, and when they do, it's going to become one of South Africa's babies in film. We haven't had many of those movies in probably a decade now, because the last time it was probably the Jerusalemas and the Tsotsis and stuff like that. I feel like this movie is going to become the new South African film baby, which is just 100% South African in every good sense of the word or term South African. Before I go, guys, keep an eye on the channel for an interview. I'm having the fortune of interviewing the director and the 2 cast members of this movie. Keep an eye out, maybe before the week comes to an end, or latest next Monday. Keep an eye out for an interview, director and the cast member of this movie. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like and share. And if you have any questions, by the way, that you'd like me to ask, pop them down in the comment section or on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like and share. And yeah guys, that's basically about it. I'll see you on the next video.
Risky mile mo java rega zolo libiri mo guanti wa go ni mara wa yu java zo mo guanti wa go ni mara wa yu mnandizo ngona marasna rere talaga jibi risky mile mo java rega zolo libiri mo guanti wa go